Hey everyone, it's that time of the week again. It's TK Friday. Last week I introduced you to the linear profile that Tony Kuiper has made available to us for free, I might add, which is really great. Thank you so much, Tony. Today I want to do a full raw edit on an image and give you some tips and tricks when using a linear profile, so stay tuned. Hello everyone and welcome to the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today I'm going to show you some tips and tricks when working with linear profiles. And by the way, I love working with linear profiles and I'm using them all the time now. And today I want to give you some helpful information that will really help you to get the best out of linear profiles. In the description below this video, I'm going to provide the link to where you can get the profiles and a link to where you can get the instruction sheet on how to install them. And you can watch my last video from last week. I'll link that at the end of this video so you can see. I actually show you how to install the profiles on that video, so you may want to watch that if you haven't seen that one yet. And by the way, Tony has had great response. A lot of you have downloaded the profiles, and if Tony didn't have the profile made for you, you send him information, you send him a raw file, and he's made those profiles. And now Tony said he's up to 141 different camera models. So that's really exciting. Check it out. He has all these different camera models. Hasselblad, iPhone, Phantom, DJI Phantom drone camera profiles. I mean, Nikon, Olympus, Panasonic, you name it. He has a lot here. And if he doesn't have your profile, you can go ahead and send him your information. Just click right here. Contact me. If you don't see your camera listed, click this and you can send Tony a raw file from your camera and he'll make a profile for you. How cool is that? And if you didn't grab the profile for your camera yet, make sure that before you click on your camera here, you may want to check out this end user agreement. Click on this, read this. If you agree to it, click on this checkbox here, because you have to click this checkbox or you won't be able to download your camera profile. So it's very important that you click on that checkbox first. And now it's time for me to edit an image using a linear camera profile. Now at this point, Adobe do not provide any linear camera profiles for us. The closest they might even get to one is maybe the Adobe Neutral, and that's what profile I have here. Now, what I'm going to do is change my profile from Adobe Neutral to Adobe, I was going to say Adobe Standard, but no, linear Canon EOS 40D. I shot this image with a 40D. Now, by the way, these profiles will not work on TIFF files or JPEG files. The only files they will work on is RAW files. So I'm going to go ahead and click linear Canon EOS 40D and apply my profile to this image. And when I click this, notice how the image gets a lot darker and a lot flatter looking. But that's the way it should be with this profile. And what you're seeing is the true raw file, what it looks like right out of your camera. In other words, it needs developed. Just like in the old days when we used to use film, we had to get our film developed. Well, we have to develop a raw file. But now we're taking it down to the base point, the starting point, which lets you, the photo editor, have complete control over this entire editing process, which I think that is very important. Let's compare the linear profile with the Adobe Neutral profile. And as you can see there's a big difference. The linear profile is a lot flatter and darker. At the end of the day, or at the end of your editing process, I believe you're going to find out that when you use linear camera profiles, your images will look much better. Now, they take a little bit of work to get them to the point you want them to be at, but it's worth that little extra work that it takes to get a better file going into Photoshop. And once you get it into Photoshop, there's less work for you to do. And to me, that's a win-win situation. And do you always have to take your images into Photoshop? Depending on your workflow, not always. Some people are just satisfied with using Camera Raw or Lightroom to do all their processing. So it's really up to you. But still, at the end of the day, you're going to get your best results using linear profiles. Again, a linear profile gives you, the photographer and photo editor, complete control over the process. Nothing is altered in any other way. You get to work from the pure base raw format of the image. So I have a raw file, I have a linear profile applied to it, I have no settings here in the basic panel, Now, this is my workflow, and your workflow may be different, but for my workflow, because I use Topaz Denoise AI and Sharpen AI, I do not apply any sharpening to my image, which I had the default on there, so I pulled it back to 0. I use no noise reduction. I use the default setting of color noise reduction because I find I get the best results when I do that. And then the only other thing I do in lens corrections is make sure I have remove chromatic aberrations checked on and enable profile corrections checked on. It finds your camera lens. And that's important, so I always like to do that first. But then I come back up to the basic panel, and now we're going to get started. The first thing I look at is the white balance. Now, my camera does a pretty good job of getting the white balance right, so I'm not going to touch the white balance. I think it looks really good. So I'm going to leave that there. So now I'm going to come into the tone section. Now, the first thing I do is click Auto. And look how good it looks just right out of the gate just by clicking auto. Pretty amazing, right? I'm not going to stop here because I'm going to take control of this process, but this is a good starting point for me. Before I start editing, let's take a comparison of what the Adobe neutral image looks like with the auto setting on it. So let me click auto here, and that's what it looks like. Now let's compare it to the linear profile auto settings. And I hope you can see this, but I believe that the linear profile settings after you apply auto look a whole lot better than the Adobe neutral settings look like when you apply auto. I just thought that would be a good observation for us all to see. And now on to the processing. The first thing I like to do is look at my histogram. Now you'll notice with the auto settings I'm clipping the highlights and the shadows. Not bad, but I am clipping them. So I'm going to take my whites and pull those back just till the clipping goes away. And the same with my blacks. I'm going to get rid of the clipping. Now for my process, I don't touch presence adjustments. So I'm going to mainly work up here in tone. And I may mess with the vibrance and saturation, but I think the auto settings look pretty good. I may come back and revisit that later. But for now, let's just take a look at the image here. I may pull my highlights back a little bit more. I just don't want to, like if I zoom into this area right here, see if I bring this up, you can see I could blow those highlights out if I'm not careful. And you can see my clipping starts coming back up here. So I'm just going to pull these back. I just want to maintain all that detail in the highlights. And I think that looks really good right there. And then the next thing I like to do after I pull my highlights back is check out my shadows, see if I want to darken those shadows up or open them up. I think I may just darken them a tiny wee bit, maybe right there. White and black points already been set. And then this is an important one, contrast. I find with linear profiles, a lot of times you want to add a little extra contrast here. So I'm going to take the contrast and I'm going to start to move it to the right. Now you'll notice when I start to move it to the right, you notice how the saturation starts changing. I start pulling in more saturation. So I got to be careful here, and I don't want to go too far and block up my shadows. But I can go pretty far here. I got a lot of range on this contrast control when you're using the linear profile. But I think maybe right around here looks good. And so far, I think the saturation looks pretty good. I may just, let me see what happens if I take my saturation back just a little wee bit. Yeah, I might take the saturation back a little wee bit. I think the vibrance is pretty good where it is. Yeah, somewhere right around there. I think that looks good. I like these basic adjustments. Now, here's the next step, and here's a tip for you. Go into the HSL color. Now, when you're in Lightroom, it's called HSL color. When you're in Photoshop, it's called color mixer in the camera raw. So if you use camera raw, it's going to be called color mixer. If you're using Lightroom, it's called HSL color. But they both do the same thing. Now, this is where you nuance and massage the image to get it looking just the way that you want it. Now, this is where you got to take a little bit of time and take great care here and be very observant when you adjust these controls. The first thing I like to do is start with saturation. Now, you could use the targeted adjustment tools if you want to, but I find it's easier just to start at the top, go through all my colors, red, orange, yellow, green, aqua, and so on and so forth. Start with red. I'll move it to the right. And look over here. Here's what I want you to observe. You see this right here? You got to watch this kind of stuff because these are artifacts that will come into your image. where areas of blur are gradiating into other areas, like this orange color is gradiating into this pink color. And if I overdo my red, so like say for instance, I say, I'm looking here and I say, I like the red in here, but look at this little ring I'm getting here. This is what I want you to take complete note of. You don't want these kind of artifacts here. So if you're looking at this area and you say, you know what, I like that extra red, let me even give it a little bit more, I'm good. But if you didn't look around and see this artifact here, or you see some weird things happening around these edges here, because this was shot with a very shallow depth of field, so these are all blurred out areas. But if I take these sliders too far, the image is going to start to break apart, and you don't want that. So what you need to do is take note. If you want to add a little bit of red, you can only add it to the point where you get a nice smooth graduated area in here. So if I want to add some red, I could only add, say, I really can't add any red here, because if I do, I'm going to get that weird ring. In fact, in reality, I probably should pull the red back just slightly. You see that? Even at 0, I can see a slight ring right there. You see it? I don't know if you can see that on the video. Let me double click this and get it back. It's 0. Can you see that slight ring there? So in this case, I would want to maybe pull this back just a little wee bit to like a -16 to get rid of that. Sometimes you have to pull things back if you're getting artifacts, so be careful. So the next thing I'll do is I'll go to orange, and I'll start to pull the orange up and see if orange is helping anything. Now, orange is helping the butterfly here, but it's screwing up down here. Can you see the artifacts that are coming in here? So what I'm going to do is pull the orange back until that gives me a nice smooth transition in here. And now let's look at the butterfly. See, now I can get up to a 46. So I've made those wings look a little more on the orange or brownish side of things, which I think looks good. But then take a look at other areas of the image and make sure you're not getting any weird artifacts. So I can't stress this enough. Be very careful here. Now let's go to yellow. So we have a lot of yellow on the flower right here. So if I want to increase that yellow saturation, like so. Now let's see what happens if I go too far. If I go too far, I'm getting some weird stuff happening down here. So I'm going to go to this area here so I can see my yellow, and I can also see the weird artifact I'm getting here. So I'm going to watch this area and watch this area, and I'm going to start to pull back the yellow to where this blends in nicely. But yet I can give myself a little bit more yellow here. I think so far it's looking pretty good. And then I'm looking for other artifacts that might be developing. Next, I'll move into green, and let's see, do I want to add any more green saturation? I don't know, maybe just a little bit of green here I think looks pretty good. Nice. Let's check the aqua out. Now, you can take these sliders and you can drag them to the right, you can drag them to the left. You can see not much is happening with the aqua. So I might just pull that aqua back a little bit. And again, be looking for artifacts to develop. I think pretty good. Maybe right there looks good. Now let's check blue. Now if I take this blue and drag it to the right, you can see there's blue in this part of the butterfly because it's picking up from the sky. And if I don't want any blue, I can take that blue and maybe just move it to the left a little bit and make sure I don't have any blue in this area right here. And again, keep looking for artifacts. So far, so good, I think. Okay, right there. Now let's check the purple out. Now there'll be some purple, I believe, in the flower here. Let's move this to the right. Yeah, and you see when I really drag it to the right, see how it's breaking apart up in here. So you got to be careful around the edges here. We don't want that. Let's see, do we want any purple in here? If I want purple, it's just going to be a slight bit. Just to give me a little bit of a different tint in this flower here. I like it. It's making a little more to the pink side of things, so I like that. And now let's try the magenta. Do we want a little more magenta in there? That'll enrich the color a little bit if I add a little bit of magenta. And if I do, I don't want to add too much. And I think that's really good. After I do the saturation, I come up to hue and I start with a red. And again, I'm just going to shift the hues a little bit just to see if it makes my image look any better. And these are artistic decisions here. Now you can see it's the red hue is affecting that orange spot there, and I got to be careful. To reset these sliders, double click on the name of the slider or double click on the slider itself, and that'll reset them back to 0 for you. But let's just see one way or the other. Do I want to shift that? I think if I shift it to right around a 7 or an 8, I get a little nice blend in here better. So I think that looks better. That takes care of that little issue. I was having a slight line in there, but shifting that hue there corrected that. Now let's check the orange out. Do I want to play with the orange at all? I'm going to go one way or the other. And I'm looking right in here for a nice blend. And I think that looks good right there. And again, I'm looking for artifacts to develop anywhere else in the image. Let's try our yellow. We can make our yellows more yellow if I move this way, or they start to catch like a green tint when I go to the right, or I can warm them up a little bit by moving this to the left. And also, I think it helps this out of focus leaves up here. Check that out. It's not affecting that too much, but let's just look in here. I think I may want to make these a little more to the orange side of things, maybe like that. And again, I'm looking for artifacts to develop. So I got to be careful. I can't go too far. Now let's try the greens. The greens are where I can add a little bit of different tint up on these leaves up in here. But again, I got to watch for artifacts, and I don't want to make my greens go real yellow, so that's not going to look good. But I may just want to vary that just a little wee bit. Like that. Like a -18. It just adds a little yellowish tint up in here, and I think that looks really nice. I like it. Let's check the aqua out. So if I move the aqua to the right, it's adding some aqua to my greens, and I don't know if I want that. I might just move it to the left a little bit. And again, I'm really watching for artifacts to develop anywhere. And let's try blue. I'm just going to double click blue because that's not helping anything. Let's try the purple. See, that's going to it's going to change the tint up in here. So I don't think that looks good. So I'm just going to see, do I want, I can take it to the right and make things a little more to the pink side of things, which I think helps. I think making the purples a little more in the pink side blends the flowers in a little bit better. And let's check the magenta. I don't think magenta is going to help. I can make my flower a little more to the pink side if I want it by moving this magenta a little bit to the right. And I think that looks pretty good. Now, if we click right here, we can shut off these adjustments. There's the before and there's the after. It's very subtle, but I think it's very helpful. And lastly, if you need to, you can come down to luminance, and if you feel you need to lighten or darken anything, you can use these luminance adjustments to do that. And let me just see, do I want to do anything with the flower? Let's see if I can lighten up the flower a little bit. Again, you got to watch it because if you go too far, you're going to get artifacts. Let me double click and let me just see. I might just give it a slight lightening, right like that. And let me see, what about the purple? No, the purple. I may pull the purple back just a little bit. Let's see a before. Here's a before, and here's an after. So I'm liking it. That's it. And then you can come back to basic, and if you need to readjust anything, you can. Like, for instance, what if I want to give it just maybe a slight bit more exposure after all those settings there? Just a little bit, not much. And I like it. And that's basically it. Now, at this point, I could go ahead and send this into Photoshop, do my noise reduction and sharpening. And if I need to do anything else in Photoshop, I can do that as well. Well, we started out with this image. This is with the linear profile applied, and we end up looking like this. If you don't have your linear profile, go ahead and grab it on Tony's site and let me know how it goes for you. Well, there you go. That was a complete edit of a raw file using a linear camera profile. Now remember, those profiles only work on raw files. And if you don't have your linear profile yet, head on over to this linear profile repository page. I'll link it in the description below so you can get there really easily. Go down to the bottom of the page and see if you can find your camera. If you can't find your camera, go right here and contact Tony and he will make that profile for you. If you enjoyed the tutorial today, please give it a like, share it with your friends, and if you're not yet a subscriber to my channel, please subscribe, click that bell notification icon, then every time I upload a new tutorial, you'll be notified about it. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me today in the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. I'll see you all right here next time, but until then, happy editing!